I never imagined that the home I poured my heart into would one day become the battleground for my own eviction. After years of sacrifice, late nights, endless support, and putting my family's needs before my own, I was blindsided by a single cold demand: "You need to move out." The words came from my daughter-in-law, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly, her eyes fixed on me with a determination I'd never seen before. My son stood beside her, silent, his gaze averted as if he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. In that moment, the walls I'd helped build felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with a sense of betrayal I never thought I'd feel from my own family. It's strange how quickly everything can change. One day, you're the glue holding everyone together. The next, you're being pushed out, wanted, inconvenient in your own home. I could feel the sting of tears threatening, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of her. It's not after everything I'd done. I wanted to scream, to ask how they could do this to me, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stood there, frozen as the life I'd built began to unravel. But what they didn't know was that I still had one card left to play. This house wasn't just a roof over our heads, it was mine. And if they thought I'd leave quietly, they were in for a surprise. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything, not just for them, but for me. And I promise you won't see the twist coming. Looking back, it's almost hard to believe how close we once were. My son Daniel was my pride and joy from the moment he was born. I raised him on my own after his father passed away when Daniel was just 8. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. And every night, no matter how tired I was, I'd sit on the edge of his bed and listen to him talk about his dreams. He always said he wanted to make me proud, and I always told him he already had. When Daniel met Emily, I was genuinely happy for him. She was bright, ambitious, and seemed to adore him. I welcomed her into our family with open arms, eager to finally have a daughter. Our first holidays together were filled with laughter and warmth. I remember the Thanksgiving when Emily insisted on making her grandmother's stuffing recipe, and we all ended up in tears from laughing so hard at the disaster it became. Those were the moments I cherished, the feeling that, after so many years of struggle, I finally had a real family again. After Daniel and Emily got married, they decided to buy a house. Daniel called me one evening, his voice hesitant, and asked if I would consider moving in with them. He said it would help them financially, and besides, he wanted me close. I hesitated at first. I didn't want to intrude on their new life, but Daniel insisted. "Mom, you've always been there for me. Let us be there for you now." The house we found was perfect. A cozy 3-bedroom with a big kitchen and a garden out back. I put up most of the down payment from my savings, and my name went on the deed. Felt like a new beginning for all of us. At first, living together was everything I'd hoped for. I cooked dinners, helped with the bills, and even took care of the garden Emily loved but never had time for. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, sharing stories and dreams for the future. I felt needed, included, and loved. But as time went on, little things began to change. Emily started working longer hours, and Daniel seemed more distant. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just the stress of young marriage and new responsibilities. Still, did everything I could to make their lives easier. When Emily's mother fell ill, I took over more of the household chores so she could visit the hospital. When Daniel lost his job for a few months, I covered the mortgage payments without a second thought. I never kept squy, just wanted my family to be happy and secure. I told myself that's what mothers do. They give, and they give, and they give, even when no one notices. But lately, I'd started to feel like a guest in my own home. The warmth that once filled our kitchen had cooled, replaced by awkward silences and polite forced smiles. I tried to ignore the tension, clinging to the memories of better days. I never imagined that the love and sacrifice that built our family would one day be the very thing that tore us apart. It started with the smallest things, so small, in fact, that I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. Emily used to greet me every morning with a cheerful "Good morning, Mom," as she poured her coffee. But lately, her greetings had become clipped. her eyes fixed on her phone or the clock. I'd try to make conversation, asking about her work or her plans for the day, but her answers were short, almost rehearsed. "Busy day," she'd say, barely glancing up. I told myself she was just tired, that everyone goes through phases, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter with each passing. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, I overheard Emily on the phone in the hallway. Her voice was hushed, but the words were clear enough. "I just need more space. It's like I can't breathe sometimes." I froze, a plate in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. Was she talking about me? I tried to shake it off, but the doubt lingered, gnawing at me. The next day I found my favorite mug pushed to the back of the cupboard, replaced by a new set Emily had bought. "I thought we could freshen things up," she said with a tight smile when I asked about it. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a message. Out with the old, in with the new. I tried to laugh it off, but the mug had been a gift from Daniel on my 50th birthday. I wondered if he even noticed it was gone. The awkwardness seeped into every corner of the house. I'd walk into the living room and find Emily and Daniel whispering, their conversation stopping abruptly when I entered. "Oh, hi, Mom," Daniel would say, forcing a smile. Emily would nod, her eyes darting away. I started spending more time in my room, not wanting to intrude, but the walls felt like they were closing in. I missed the days when we'd all watch movies together or play cards at the kitchen table. Now, it felt like I was always in the way. One Saturday morning, I offered to make breakfast for everyone, just like I used to. Emily hesitated, then said, "Actually, I was hoping for a quiet morning. I have a lot to do." Her tone was polite, but the message was clear. I retreated to my room, blinking back tears. I could hear them laughing in the kitchen later, their voices muffled but happy. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the ache of being left out of my own family. The tension only grew when Emily started reorganizing the house. She moved my things from the hallway closet to the basement, saying she needed more space for the baby. "We'll need to make room for all the new stuff," she explained, her voice light but her eyes hard. I nodded, swallowing my pride, but inside I felt like I was being slowly erased. Daniel noticed my mood one evening and tried to reassure me. "Mom, Emily's just stressed about the baby. Things will get better, I promise." I wanted to believe him, but his words felt hollow. He didn't see the way Emily looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching, or the way she sighed when I offered to help. I started to wonder if I was the problem, if maybe I'd overstayed my welcome. The final straw came one night when I overheard them arguing behind closed doors. Emily's voice was sharp, almost desperate. "I can't raise a baby with her here. Daniel, I need my own space. This is our home now." Daniel's reply was muffled, but I caught the words, "She's my mother, and I owe her everything." I pressed my ear to the door, my heart breaking with every word. I never wanted to be a burden, but it was clear that's exactly what I'd become. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every conversation, searching for where things had gone wrong. I felt invisible, unwanted, and utterly alone. But nothing could have prepared me for what Emily would say next, the words that would shatter whatever was left of our fragile peace. The day that changed everything started out so ordinary, it almost felt like a cruel joke. I was in the kitchen, folding laundry at the table, when Daniel and Emily walked in together. There was a nervous energy between them, the kind that makes your skin prickle even before a word is spoken. Emily's hands were clasped tightly in front of her, and Daniel kept glancing at her as if searching for courage in her eyes. "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" Daniel asked, his voice softer than usual. I looked up, trying to read their faces, but Emily's expression was unreadable, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes shining with something I couldn't quite place. I set the laundry aside and nodded, bracing myself. Emily took a deep breath and reached for Daniel's hand. "We have some news," she began, her voice trembling just a little. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. I felt a rush of emotion, surprise, joy, even a little relief. Maybe this was the fresh start we needed, a new life to bring us all together again. I stood up, a smile breaking across my face. "Oh, Emily, that's wonderful. Congratulations, both of you." I reached out to hug her, but she stepped back, her body stiffening. "There's more," she said, her tone suddenly colder. "We've been talking, and we think it's time for you to move out." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "Move out," my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked away, his jaw clenched, but Emily pressed on. "It's nothing personal," she said quickly, as if that would soften the blow. "It's just, with the baby coming, we need our own space. We need to start our own family, just the three of us. It's important for us, for the baby." I felt the room spin around me. My hands trembled as I gripped the back of the chair for support. "But this is my home too," I managed, my voice cracking. "I helped you buy this house. I've been here for you, for both of you, every step of the way." Daniel finally spoke, his voice thick with guilt. "Mom, I know this is hard, but Emily's right. We need to do what's best for our family. Maybe you could stay with Aunt Linda for a while, or look for a place of your own. We'll help you, of course." I looked at my son, searching his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised, the boy who used to run to me when he was scared, who promised he'd always take care of me. But all I saw was a man torn between his wife and his mother, and I realized, with a sickening clarity, that I was no longer his priority. Emily's eyes were hard now, her jaw set. "We're not asking, we're telling you. We need you to move out before the baby comes. It's what's best for everyone." 1,000 words fought to escape my lips: anger, disbelief, heartbreak. But I couldn't find my voice. I felt like a stranger in my own life, as if I'd been written out of the story without warning. I wanted to scream, to beg, to make them see how much this hurt. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Their minds were made up. I turned away, blinking back tears, my heart shattering with every step. I heard Daniel call after me, his voice pleading, but I couldn't bear to look back. In that moment, I realized that everything I'd given, every sacrifice I'd made, meant nothing. I was being cast aside, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But as I closed the door to my room, a cold resolve settled over me. If they wanted me gone, they would get their wish, but not in the way they expected. The consequences of their decision would ripple through all our lives, and none of us would ever be the same. The hours after that confrontation blurred together in a haze of disbelief and pain. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the faded photograph of Daniel as a little boy, his gap-toothed smile beaming up at me. How had we come to this? My mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. Was I really so unbearable to live with? Had I missed the signs, or had they simply chosen to ignore everything I'd done for them? I could hear their voices drifting down the hallway, muffled, tense, and sharp. Daniel's voice was low, pleading. "Emily, she's my mother. You can't just throw her out." Emily's reply was quick, her words clipped and resolute. "We're not throwing her out, Daniel. We're starting our own family. She'll be fine. She's strong. She'll land on her feet." I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the ache of being discussed like a problem to be solved, rather than a person with feelings and history. Dinner that night was a silent affair. I sat at the table, pushing food around my plate, while Daniel stared at his hands and Emily scrolled through her phone. The air was thick with things unsaid. I tried to speak, to ask what I'd done to deserve this, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I watched as Emily finished her meal and stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm going to bed," she announced, not looking at either of us. Daniel followed her with his eyes, his face etched with worry and regret. Later, Daniel knocked softly on my door, stepped inside, his shoulders slumped, looking more like the little boy I remembered than the man he'd become. "Mom, I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I never wanted it to be like this. I don't know what to do." I wanted to reach out to comfort him, but I couldn't find the strength. "You have to do what's best for your family," I said quietly, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "Just remember, I'm your family too." The days that followed were filled with awkward avoidance. Emily busied herself with baby books and nursery plans, barely acknowledging my presence. She justified her decision to anyone who would listen her. Mother on the phone, her friends who stopped by for coffee. "It's normal. I overheard her say, "Every couple needs their own space. She'll understand eventually." Her words stung, painting me as the unreasonable one, the obstacle to their happiness. Daniel, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves and guilt. He tried to make small talk, offering to help me pack or look for apartments. I could see the conflict. In his eyes, the way he flinched every time Emily brought up my departure. He wanted to do right by everyone, but in trying to please his wife, he was breaking his mother's heart. I wondered if he realized the cost. I spent my days sorting through my belongings, each item a reminder of the life I'd built here. The photo albums, the hand-stitched quilt from my mother, the little ceramic cat Daniel made in kindergarten. I packed them away, my hands trembling, tears slipping down my cheeks. Every box felt like a goodbye, not just to the house, but to the family I thought I had. The nights were the hardest. I lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the house, haunted by memories of laughter and love that now felt so distant. I replayed every conversation, every sacrifice, wondering where I'd gone wrong. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, a weight pressing down on my chest, but beneath the pain, a new feeling began to stir and ger. I had given everything to this family, and now I was being cast aside like yesterday's news. I realized I couldn't rely on anyone else to fight for me. If I wanted respect, I would have to claim it for myself. The time for tears was ending. The time for action was about to begin. I woke up one morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The pain was still there, but it had hardened into something sharper resolve. I was done waiting for someone else to save me or to see my worth. If I was going to be pushed out of my own home, I needed to know exactly where I stood. So I gathered my courage, slipped on my coat, and made an appointment with a lawyer. Sitting across from her in a small, sunlit office, I poured out my story, how I'd helped by the house, how my name was on the deed, how I was now being told to leave. She listened carefully, her eyes kind but businesslike. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You have every right to stay. In fact, you have the right to sell if you choose. This house is as much yours as it is theirs." Her words were a lifeline. For the first time in months, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just a guest or a Burdani, was an owner. I left her office with a folder of documents and a new sense of purpose burning in my chest. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where so many family meals had been shared, and waited for Daniel and Emily to come home. When they walked in, I looked them both in the eye and spoke with a calm I didn't know I possessed. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I began. "I know my rights. If you want me out, then I'm selling my share of the house. We'll put it on the market." The shock on their faces was almost satisfying. Daniel's mouth fell open, and Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that," she sputtered. But I held up a hand. "I can, and I will. I won't be pushed aside in a home I helped build." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the realization that the balance of power had shifted. I could see the fear flicker in Emily's eyes, the regret in Daniel's. They hadn't expected me to stand up for myself, to take control of the situation. But I was done being invisible. As I went to bed that night, I felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. I knew this decision would change everything, not just for me, but for all of us. The house that once held our family together was about to become the thing that forced us apart. And deep down, I wondered if any of us would ever truly recover from what was coming next. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of real estate agents, open houses, and tense silences. Daniel and Emily moved through the motions in a daze, their excitement about the baby now overshadowed by the reality of losing their home. I watched as they packed up their things. The nursery Emily had so carefully planned, now just another empty room. There were moments when I caught Daniel looking at me with a mixture of sadness and apology, but the words never came. Emily, for her part, kept her distance, her pride refusing to let her admit regret. The day the house sold, I walked through each room one last time, letting the memories wash over me. The kitchen where I'd cooked countless meals, the living room where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, The garden where I'd watched Daniel and Emily laugh together in happier times. Every corner held a piece of my heart, and letting go felt like tearing away a part of myself. I paused in the doorway of my old bedroom, running my hand along the wall, and allowed myself a few quiet tears. This was the end of a chapter I'd never wanted to close. Moving out was both painful and strangely freeing. I found a small apartment not far from the old neighborhood, a place that was entirely my own. For the first time in years, I could arrange my things just the way I liked, cook what I wanted, and come and go as I pleased. The silence was different. Here, not heavy with tension, but peaceful, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Miss Daniel, of course, and even Emily in her own way. But I also felt a sense of pride I hadn't known in a long time. I had stood up for myself, claimed my worth, and refused to be erased. Daniel called me a few days after the move. His voice was quiet, almost childlike. "Mom, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to end like this." I told him I loved him, that I always would, but that sometimes loving someone means letting go. We both cried, but there was healing in those. Tears of recognition that we were both hurting, both growing, both learning what it means to set boundaries. Emily never reached out, and maybe she never will. I've made my peace with that. Some wounds take longer to heal, and some relationships aren't meant to be mended right away. What matters is that I found my voice. And in doing so, I found myself again. Letting go of the house was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most liberating. I learned that home isn't just a place, it's the space you create for yourself, the boundaries you set, and the love you refuse to compromise. And as I settled into my new life, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Looking back, I realized that losing my place in that house was never really about the walls or the roof, was about finding my place within myself. For so long, I believed that love meant sacrifice, that being a good mother meant giving until there was nothing left. But I've learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're doors you open for yourself, invitations to step into your own worth. It still hurts, of course. There are days when I miss the laughter in the kitchen, the comfort of family traditions, the feeling of being needed. But I no longer measure my value by how much I give or how quietly I endure. I am more than the roles I've played or the sacrifices I've made. I am allowed to take up space, to say no, to choose myself even when it's hard. Family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about respect, kindness, and the willingness to see each other as whole people, not just as what we can provide. I hope Daniel and Emily find their own way, and I hope they learn, as I have, that true family is built on mutual care, not silent suffering. If you're listening to my story and see yourself in these words, know this: you are not alone, and you are not selfish for wanting more. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even if it means walking away from what you thought was home. And if you think this was the end of my story, just wait. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it.